Everyone, welcome to another episode of Founder Wisdom Podcast. Today with us, we have Abigail Carroll. She's host of Happy Planet Podcast and founder at Happy Planet Capital. Abigail, welcome to the pod. Can you give us a brief intro about yourself and about your businesses?
Sure. Thank you, Charles. I'm so happy to be here. So I am currently doing some angel investing through a vehicle that I started that's called Happy Planet Capital. And on the course of meeting with all these inspiring entrepreneurs, I decided I, like you, wanted to start a podcast and kind of in order to give hope to people. There's so much exciting innovation going on right now in the sort of impact area that I feel like there's a lot of reason to be hopeful about the world and where we're headed.
Sure. I'm the same. I think that, well, there's two ways to view the world. One is like really cynical. A lot of cynics out there that think about everything with negativity lens, like ChatGPT is not good. We're getting dumber. It's going to replace us. And there's positive people that view technology as a tool to improve the world. So tell me a bit more about your podcast, what kind of people you've been interviewing, and also tell us in the process about the Oyster Farm thing, because I listened to your TED Talk, was quite cool. Tell us about that.
I've come a long way from the Oyster Farm, but the Oyster Farm sort of will just back up because it kind of leads to what I'm doing now. I was actually in Paris doing startup stuff before I had an oyster farm, and I came home and I agreed to help write a business plan for somebody, and then I wound up with the oyster farm, which was something I was not entirely happy about. But I bought myself a pair of waders, and I got on the water and I started raising oysters, and it was a real sort of come to Jesus moment about the climate, because I was living climate change, firsthand. All of these, we were having issues on the Maine coast that were southern problems that had kind of come north with the warming waters. And so I just became very, a real advocate for the climate. And we did a lot of client-faced, we had oyster tours. That was a big part of what we did. And so people would come to the farm, and it was really our opportunity to talk to people about climate change and, oysters' role in climate change and how oysters can help with cleaning up waterways and things like that. And it really became part of our brand, was to really think about the climate and what we could do to help it. And then
tell us also, like, what's the role of oysters in the global warming phenomena that we're seeing, and also how can oceans help out clean the air that we're breathing on a daily basis?
Right. I mean, basically, like half the oxygen that we breathe comes from the ocean. We don't think about it that way, but the ocean, we think about trees, but the truth is that a lot of the ocean, our oxygen's coming from trees under the water. The whole ecosystem.
Algae or corals, like, how does that work?
I meant seaweed and from the ocean. And so it has a really important role in climate change. It's a great opportunity for sequestering carbon. A lot of carbon can be sequestered in the ocean through seaweed, I'm talking to one company right now that's coming out on the podcast that is producing a synthetic whale excrement, because, we only have a third of the whales that we're supposed to have on the planet, and their excrement actually plays a very vital role in biodiversity, in ocean health, and in pulling carbon out of the air. So they're producing something that simulates whale excrement that they're hoping to fertilize the sea with it in certain areas where this can have a real impact on the climate as a whole.
And your job nowadays is also to find these companies. You're a board member and seed investor at Blue Trace. You're also entrepreneur in residence / mentor at See Ahead.
Yeah. Yeah.
How can we monetize these social startups, because they help the planet, but how can they make money out of that? Would they go with normal investors? Would government be paying for that? How can we make money out of these businesses?
Well, it's interesting because, a lot of them seem very pie in the sky, but I actually believe that you can build real revenue models into a lot of these companies. So even the whale excrement one, which sounds like, they're actually part of the Elon Musk, X challenge, which is, and he's trying to encourage you. There's $100 million prize to remove carbon, like for the company that can do the best job and most efficient job of removing carbon from the atmosphere. So they're number 60 of 1,000 applicants in that challenge. So they're doing pretty well. And but they actually think that they can they have a carbon credit program that they think that they can actually monetize with this once they get going. Now the challenge is finding the funding to get going. So they're going to have to probably go to either win prizes or get big grants or find creative financing. But I think there's a lot of opportunities out there, and I think revenue is going to follow in a lot of these.
For those that aren't familiar with carbon credits, so it's a law. If you're a business, you need to pay for some carbon credits if you use too much or have a CO2 footprint that is too high, while some other companies, if their average CO2 footprint is smaller, they can actually benefit from that. So it takes the money that other consumers gave and you put it back in your pocket. So is that how it works? I'm not super familiar with it, as you can see.
Right. No. So basically you can, if you're planting mangroves or or you have something that's pulling carbon out of the air or planting trees, you can sell that as a credit to people who are using lots of fossil fuels, and those people will buy it to correct their carbon footprint balance sheet, if you will. Okay. And increasingly it's going to be, right now a lot of companies are doing it just voluntarily. It's good business, it's good PR, but increasingly there will be rules established. If people have a heavy carbon footprint, they will have to offset it by investing in these projects or buying credits from these projects that are removing carbon.
Got it. And so the government runs that program, right? Is it like European Union? Is it the US? How does that work?
It's a bit of the Wild West right now. There's a big organization called Vera that is a nonprofit organization. It's not a government entity, and they're doing a lot of validation and measuring and validation and certifying of projects. They have come under a lot of scrutiny lately. A lot of their projects were criticized for not having the carbon removal that they said. So this is a segment that's actually figuring out its own way right now. Japan just came up with its own ocean-based carbon removal program or carbon credit program for seaweed. It's the first in the world. So it's just being managed differently in a lot of different places. At some point, I suspect that this will be harmonized into a more sort of logical landscape. But right now, it's just these are really early markets. There's a lot of disruption. There's a lot of confusion, and it'll be really interesting to see how it plays out and who the big players are.
Yeah, the Far West is also an opportunity for young startups to develop SaaS products, let's say, to help confused huge enterprise in that market and how to manage carbon credits and so forth. My question is, how do they track the actual carbon emission or demission, if you want? Like, how do they track that? That my business, we do like, I don't know, 200 tons of CO2 per day, vs that this business that plants trees saves 200 tons. Like, do they have ways to confirm? Is it like accounting practices type of?
Well, there's, I think they use a lot of sort of mapping technologies and some AI, and, you can, if you're offsetting with sort of a mangrove or a forest, something that you can plant, it gets much murkier in the ocean, right? But on the land-based stuff, you can kind of look at maps of trees. Imagine kind of Google Maps and zooming in and looking at trees, and you can see if generally that forest, that planting has stayed alive, and you can kind of continue to verify it. But these are, again, this is a moving target. We're really figuring a lot of this stuff out now, and Vera is it's sort of the standard right now, and they've come under a lot of scrutiny. So this is going to take a lot of time to figure out, or some time to figure out. But in any case, there's momentum in the right direction. People are taking the bet that you'll be able to get this carbon credits, and so they're doing climate positive actions and setting up climate positive businesses. And on the private segment, I think there are some there is definitely brokering going on of forests and things like that. Even in my home state of Maine, a lot of people are selling carbon credits for their forests. These are tree businesses. We won't cut our trees, and we'll sell those credits to fossil fuel companies.
I've seen that. Well, my findings with capitalism has been that, people consume and don't really care about the effects of their consumption, generally speaking. But capitalism is a great driver. It's a great force of good as well. For example, the Elon project, I think it's somewhat of an exception, and it's not scalable to have a billionaire like donate money to these causes. But I think there can be a market with the carbon credits, with the incentives to do better for the environment. I'm really eager to see like what the future has for us there. Are you an optimist when it comes to this? And are you like somewhat of a technologist like me that thinks that someone is gonna resolve this massively? Some startup is gonna resolve it massively through innovation, through technology eventually, just like we've seen in the AI realm with ChatGPT. We've seen like just a floodgate of innovation there and progress. Do you think the same is going to happen to the environment?
I do. I mean, I think it's a scary time, but it's also an incredibly exciting time. And I think, we got to step back. I don't like this sort of Cartesian thinking of being like, we're in these goods and these bads, and we have to take fossil fuels for also all the good that they've done, right?
Yep, exactly.
Now we know that they've created all these problems, but the truth is we drive, we can see our relatives, the planet got a lot shorter, a lot smaller. We have electricity, we're eating better. People are not dying as much in the cold. Like it did a lot of good. It solved a lot of problems. Now the sort of impact of fossil fuels has become the problem, and the same spirit and that same drive and that same capitalism that created all that rode the horse of fossil fuels to solve those other problems is going to come and solve this problem. I mean, I'm so inspired by the people I've been meeting and their commitment. And it's really, I do think there is a shift though in even capitalism, because these young entrepreneurs are really mission driven. I think a lot of them are going to make oodles of money, but they are so focused on their mission. And they're much more conscientious of stakeholder value rather than just shareholder value than businesses were, or I would say than businesses have become. Because I think stakeholder value was much more important a couple generations ago.
How can we convert a social start. I mean, the carbon credit system is good, but it's still a public invention. And I think that to get massive innovation and massive growth, we need to take all of this private. How can money grow on trees, basically? Like how can we convert doing good for the environment and directly making money from it? A good example would be solar panels, right? I mean, this is dollar signs right there. The sun is used to produce energy, and humans need energy to survive, basically. Yes, there is somewhat of a cost to the environment doing that, but it's way better. So did you had ideas on how to literally like convert the environmental positivity / environmental impact into real dollar signs that Wall Street would actually want to buy in and fund and finance?
So the company that inspired my whole podcast is called Urchinomics.
Okay.
And they're based in Norway, but they're basically blowing up all over the world. So there's a problem in nature, which is that there are these barrens that have they're sea urchin barrens. And that happens when sea urchins overpopulate in an area, they kill off everything, and then they end up killing themselves because there's no food left, there's no life left. You just, are completely a dead zone. It creates a dead zone in the water. So they are removing these almost dead sea urchins from these barrens. And when they do that, nature restores itself. These kelp forests grow back, biodiversity comes back, the carbon is sequestered. So it has all of these benefits once they remove these sea urchins. They take these sea urchins, they bring them on land, they use the state-of-the-art aquaculture technologies, and Norway is very advanced in onshore aquaculture. They are breathing new life into them. They are selling them, and they are as the highest quality uni. Apparently, in taste tests, they are comparable with the highest quality ones, and then they use the shells for natural fertilizer. So they're upcycling. I mean, it's like this beautiful system. And they are actually, because they're operating in Japan, they were the first wild seaweed restoration carbon credit issued in the whole world. So they get to benefit from that as well. So I think businesses are going to look a little different. They're going to be circular. There's going to be a lot of revenue streams. They're not, they're going to be thinking about their waste. They're going to be thinking about all of the different aspects of how their business runs. And I think that's really exciting.
Yes, it is. It looks win-win-win on paper. That is. Let's see in practice if it's different. And also this brought the question to me, like, is natural destruction part of the chaotic system of long-term equilibrium in nature? But that's we'll keep that one for another pod. Thank you for showing up today, Abigail. It was pretty nice. Where can people find out more about you?
My website, happyplanetpodcast.com.
Hey, well, thank you so much.